Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. We're very glad you're with us today. It is February 25th, 2022. Our agenda this morning, we'll start out with success stories. I didn't get any emails today, but maybe somebody's on the line who's got some good news to share. We'll then have everybody put their 30-second introductions into the chat window. We will then go to committee reports. We'll go about workshops, job fairs, practice interview team, interview success workshop, and the career tip of the week. And then we will hear from our speaker for the main event. If for those people on Zoom, please use the Zoom chat window if you have any questions throughout the presentation. Also, if you're welcome to, we'll put your 30-second introductions into there also. For those people watching on Facebook, you're welcome to enter your questions into the comment field. Please note this event is being recorded and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, you give consent for your name and picture to appear. Please note that any comments you put in the Zoom chat window do not appear in the recording. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. Back in 2007, I took over facilitating and leading the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. The group's been around since the late 1990s. It's had several different leaders between that time and 2007. I've led it since that time. In 2008, I started a website called careerdfw.org to help those who are unemployed in the Dallas-Fort Worth area by trying to put everything you need to know about your job search in one place. In 2012, I launched the second website, careerusa.org, to help those around the United States. I've also written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search That You May Not Know. It is available on Amazon. Since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team, and you'll hear more about that in just a couple minutes. Well, we like to start the meeting off with good news, success stories. Do we have any landings? Anybody land out there? Any landings? Going once, going twice? All right. Nobody wants to eat donuts. Okay. All right. What we'd like everybody to do, if you will, is please open up the chat window. Just hover over the bottom of your screen, click on the chat window, and please put in your 30-second introductions. We'd like to know what your name is, comma, phone number, comma, email address, comma, position you're looking for, comma, 2 or 3 target companies, and then hit the return key. What I will do is I will gather all this information and I will put it out in an email this afternoon, along with a copy of the roster. This also is the only way I know that you've attended today's meeting. So if you're counting this as a workforce selection for the week, please be sure to get your name on the chat window. That way I can make sure that I've added you to the roster for this week. So we'll give everybody 30 seconds on the clock. And for those people watching on Facebook right now, if you put your 30-second introductions into the chat window or into the comment field, I will go and delete that information right after this meeting's over, so it will not hang out there forever and ever, and I can get you counted as being part of the group. All right, it's time to hear about job, career fairs, training, and workshops. Eldon has decided to take a couple weeks off, so he will not be with us this week or next week. So you get to hear me do this. So all the items that Eldon normally talks about comes from the calendars of careerdfw.org for those living here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. At the very top, you'll see a color coding of all the different events are in different color codes. All the instructions are right up there at the very, very top. So job fairs. Next week, there's only one job fair that we're aware of. It's a hiring event for Dallas Water Utilities. They're looking for water meter technicians and water meter readers. So if you're interested, please apply at dallascityhall.com. And they also doing on-the-spot interviews, 6th floor of the Johnson Museum, Johnson Library, downtown Dallas. So that's the only job fair I'm aware of. For special workshops or events, next Tuesday, LinkedIn, every Tuesday to do a LinkedIn presentation. The presentation next week is by Locke Alderson. We'll talk about, let's see here, Locke's talk is, which one? LinkedIn for job seekers, strategies to get results. So you can join us. There's a Zoom link, and we'll also be on Facebook next Tuesday at 1 o'clock. Next Wednesday, the practice interview team will have, you'll be able to observe a practice interview. So that's at 1 o'clock. That will be on Zoom only. It will not be recorded. So if you want to watch that, you do need to watch it live. And then next Thursday, Effective Resume Thursday, the first and third Thursday of the month, we talk about effective resumes. We have a speaker who will talk about the best points of a resume. So it is on Zoom or Facebook Live, and there's a link right there you can go and click on to do that. All right, if you know somebody who just got laid off or somebody who's in career transition, please tell them about Career DFW and CareerUSA.org, 2 free resources that are here just to help a job seeker. They don't collect any personal information. They're just here to help. So if you know anybody, please let them know about the 2 websites. All right, it's time to hear about the practice interview team. Good morning, Mark.
Hey, good morning, everybody. And this week we did 3 practice interviews. I think we helped the candidates quite a bit. So let me tell you how you can have your practice interview. And the tagline for the pit crew is practice early and practice often. So I hope you get yourself ready to, practice 3 or 4 or 5 times. We had one candidate come back this week for the 3rd time and one for the 2nd time. And there's been a dramatic improvement in how well they present themselves during their interview. And so that's what the pit crew is all about, is giving you the confidence and the ability and the knowledge to represent yourself well in an interview. It may be a good match, it may not be a good match, but you don't want to leave an interview thinking that you didn't say what you needed to say to convince them that you were the right person for the job. And so that's what the pit crew is all about. We give you a chance to do that in a very customized way. It's based on a job description that you provide, and of course your resume, and you send that in a couple of days in advance. And I have a group of volunteers. The heart of the pit crew are the volunteers who have all been hiring managers and have also all been through or are currently in job transition. So it's a very sympathetic and empathetic group with some skills and abilities that we'll share with you. So you'll get a chance to convince them that you're the right person for the job, based on that job description. And then immediately afterwards, you'll get some feedback on things to consider, things you did well, things you could do better. And so that's, the big value of the pit crew is the immediate feedback, because in real interviews, you oftentimes don't get any. Sometimes if you ask, you may get a little, but the pit crew does a pretty thorough job by preparing in advance and then, asking relevant questions and getting you prepared for, your next upcoming interview. Now, you can also practice multiple times. And that means you can practice multiple times for different, each opportunity you have, you may want to practice, or you can practice for the different stages of the interview. So you can practice for your phone screen, you can practice for your 1st round, 2nd round, 3rd round, so on and so forth. And we will adjust the interview questions and our expectations depending on where you are in the process. I have, people often come to the pit crew and they say, well, I've had plenty of interviews and I've made it to the last round 2 or 3 times and I just haven't gotten the job. And so let's don't have that happen to you. Come and practice and figure out, what you're doing as you get deeper into the interviews that may be thwarting your chances. When you're ready to practice, send your information to dallaspitcrew@gmail.com. And that'll include your resume and your job description. And we have interviews on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And so they're fixed times and dates. If you're curious about when those are, just send me an email and I'll send you a description of what time they are. But there's 2 on Tuesday evenings, 1 on Wednesday afternoon, and 1 on Thursday afternoon. So that's the pit crew. When you send in your information, you can select which one you'd prefer to have. And all 4 slots are open for next week. So opportunity is at hand. Just send that information in to me. DallasPitCrew@gmail.com. And there's no charge, absolutely free. Now, the Pit Crew also has a couple of other ways to help you out. And this is one of them, practice a one-way interview. These are really challenging. If you've ever had one, you'll know what I mean. And so the Pit Crew gives you a chance through our one-way interview offering just to practice engaging the tool, because it's very awkward. It's very awkward. So you just want to be used to how these tools work. And so I give you the questions in advance. There's only 4 of them. It'll be very quick. The tool gives you 3 minutes to answer each question, so 12 minutes total. And afterwards, you'll get a link so you can go look at the video and see how you did. And if you'd like to do this multiple times as well, that's no problem. There is a bit of preparation to how you use the tool. So reach out to me in advance if you're interested in doing this, and I'll send you the kind of user's guide for this tool. And then when you're ready, when you've got the time and you've studied the questions, you can request a session, and then you have 48 hours to complete that session. So that stymies a lot of people, that 48-hour time limit, which is part of the tool, because it may take you more than 48 hours just to prepare, to engage the tool. So there's my LinkedIn profile. I encourage you to send me a note when you link in. If you don't send me a note, I'm not going to respond. And really, I'm just curious where I met you, and I want to make sure that we actually were in a meeting together and not part of a multi-level marketing plan. So just put a note in there and say we met on North Dallas Career Focus Group, and that's good enough for me, and I'll add you to my LinkedIn network. And one final thing, besides the interviews that the Pit Crew offers, I also offer coaching. I just coach on one question. It's a key question that you're going to get asked is, why did you leave your last job? Or why did you have this series of short-term assignments? One of the candidates this week really didn't have any kind of relevant jobs. He had some odd jobs for the whole period from 2000 to 2008. And if you remember back to that time period, there was a big recession in early 2000. So in his industry, it was kind of a weak period. And so, he was asked about it and he explained it pretty well. But if you, have a situation like that, we can have a confidential discussion and figure out how to answer that question and any follow-up questions that might be generated from your situation. So that's Pit Crew. If I left something out, I usually forget something.
Yeah, no, I think you covered it all.
So let me just say one more thing. I haven't had any landings this week, but my story is that I was laid off 3 times from 2002 to 2012 because my industry was consolidating. So mergers would happen, and then there'd be extra people, and oftentimes me and my teams were considered extraneous. And so when I got laid off, 20, 30, up to 60 other people got laid off as well, as my particular group was deemed redundant. And even during those periods of recession, they were all able to find new gainful employment. So I come to this whole process, job search process, with a lot of confidence that you'll land as well. And so, take heart in that and do what you need to do to be prepared, like practice and go to Walt's workshop and, attend 2 or 3 of these networking meetings and, help yourself. And I think it'll all turn out well in the end. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. All right. Good morning, Walt. Let's hear about the Interview Success Workshop.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Happy Friday. I was working for a company for 25 years. I've been in information technology for many years. Got an early retirement offer. It was the 3rd round of downsizing that took it. Thought I'd be working, in 3 or 4 months. And so it took me 15 months to find a job. And I had to learn the hard way all the steps that you need to do in getting a job in job search. Today, there's so much advantage to us that there's so much online today that can help us with our job search stuff. And I started looking at interviewing, and I went to the Pit Crew, and saw what the picture does, and I thought that was fantastic. But I also thought maybe there's something else about interviewing that I ought to pay attention to, because I had this first interview, did my networking. He asked me one question. He said, Walter, what can you do for me? Now, I didn't have a clue. I mean, I just didn't know. I was ready to tell you all the things I've done. I wasn't ready to talk about anything else. So I said, that's not going to happen again. So I did a deep dive into interviewing, and I came up with the interview success workshop, which says, what are we really selling? How do we sell it? How do we differentiate ourselves from those other candidates? And so it's the basics. You know, like in baseball, you got to be able to hit, you got to be able to throw, you got to be able to catch. And one other thing, often you have to learn how to spit. But nonetheless, what are those fundamentals that we do in an interview? So I pay attention to those. We look at the basic categories of questions. You get a question out of each one. You get a video to go over your interview. So it's really a learning environment more than a mock environment. This is not a mock interview at all. It's really something that will, you know, we may as well relax while we're learning. And I just give you suggestions, options, you know, my opinions, filtered through the eyes of the interviewer, their perspective. Do the things I suggest make sense to you as an interviewer? Does that differentiate you? Does that sell who you are, what you do, and how you can help, which is the definition of ourselves? Be glad to have you. Come on down. My LinkedIn page will give you a little bit more information about it. You have to be registered to attend. All you do is send me that email and I'll give you some availability with dates. It's very, very informal. No hot seat here. You don't have to squirm. You don't have to be anxious. You don't have to see your life flash in front of your eyes. Your heart doesn't have to race. So this session is called Learning Without Squirming. And in the spirit of differentiation and prayer, is there anything I can do? I can help you with the interview. Come register today. You don't even have to pay. It's a gift from me to you.
Wow.
Wow, that's our first song ever.
Really?
Thank you. Poetry and music together. Wow.
Sign them up.
That's great.
Walt's
I don't know
raising
how
the
you might top
bar.
that next week. We'll have to see. All right. Thank you very much, Walt. All right. It's time to hear about the career tip of the week. You can see the career tip of the week on the Career DFW or Career USA YouTube channel. There's a new tip every week. Good morning, Liz.
Well, good morning, Jeff, and good morning, everyone. Walt, that was great. The current tip of the week is CV ageism, or curriculum vitae ageism. Can you be the wrong age for a job? By Sophia Epstein. Age-related biases are baked into the recruiting process, whether conscious or not. Should workers be cagey in order to overcome recruiter biases? Applying for jobs is generally miserable, even at the best of times. But what if you knew that simply revealing your age on your CV would send your application straight into the no pile? That's the reality for many people. Age discrimination means that over 50s are more than twice as likely as other workers to be unemployed for 2 years or longer if they lose their current job. One study showed that a 50-year-old worker was up to 3 times less likely to get an interview than a 28-year-old applicant. It's not just older job seekers facing automatic rejection. Young people can also be discounted for roles because of their age. This type of reverse ageism is much less researched, and studies show that younger workers can be considered undesirable employees and that this can lead to them not getting hired. When you've got baby boomers who think that millennials are lazy and entitled, you can imagine how an assumption like that could get into the recruitment process, says social scientist Stephanie Francioli of a New York University Stern School of Business. Tackling the issue of age-related assumptions in the recruitment process is tricky, and some workers have come up with their own solutions. 44% of over 45s admit to altering their age on their CV, and other strategies involve detailing most recent employment experiences or removing age-related information like graduation dates. But does removing age-related information from resumes really make a difference? A permitted prejudice. When you apply for a job, there's no obligation to put your age or age-related indicators on your CV. Even if you do, There are laws preventing employers from overtly discriminating based on age. Yet the moment your CV hits a recruiter's desk, biases around candidate ages are likely to kick in. Hiring managers often don't have time to read every application they receive thoroughly, so they often resort to making assumptions based on small details that stand out. And at a certain point, the people doing the hiring are looking for reasons to say no, and age is one of them. You're going to rely on stereotypes to make the first selection, and to some extent, that's understandable when you've got 200 applications for a single position, says Jelle Loosbroek, who studies workplace ageism at Utrecht University in the Netherlands. Part of the issue is many people don't consider ageism a problem. And a 2021 research paper from the Stanford Graduate School of Business showed that ageism seems to be the only condonable prejudice. Ageism is oftentimes a bias that doesn't even get discussed in this landscape of inequality, says lead author Professor Ashley Martin. In fact, her research shows that those who endorse and advocate for equality are more likely to be prejudiced against older individuals. We often believe older individuals have already had their successes and opportunities. So now the natural order of things says that they should step down so that younger people can step up. That oftentimes legitimizes age bias and allows people to feel pretty comfortable excluding older individuals from the workforce. In one of his research projects on age discrimination in hiring, Loosbroek ended a survey by asking, what do you think that the study was about? About 1 in 3 respondents correctly guessed that the focus of the survey was ageism. Loosbroek and his team then looked back over participants' answers, assuming they would have toned down their ageism, but that was not entirely the case. Yes, they discriminated a bit less than other groups, but they still discriminate a lot. It's as if ageism was nothing to be ashamed of. Mitigating measures. If judgments related to worker age are inevitable, is there realistically anything candidates can do to avoid falling victim to prejudices? After all, even if you strip your CV of your date of birth, there are plenty of other age-related indicators in your list of previous job skills and qualifications. And some recruitment advisors suggest leaving off key dates and only list your last 15 years of experience. The more salient your age appears on your CV, the more likely the one who reads it will focus on your age, points out Loosbroek. The harder it is to find your age, the safer you are from having your resume thrown out. There's some value in not displaying the age explicitly, but it doesn't solve everything. Stanford's Martin suggests tackling potential ageism head on. Cutting your 30, 40, or 50 years of experience down to 15 would likely downplay your accomplishments. And removing things creates a lot of ambiguity, and that opens up a lot of room for bias. When we don't know information, our mind has a lot of ability to assume. Instead, think about what your age might suggest to a recruiter about you and cut it off at the pass. Older applicants should emphasize their tech skills to counter possible stereotypes about adaptability, and younger workers should be explicit about problems that they've solved, particularly ones that might appear out of the age bracket. If candidates can catch a recruiter's attention for the right reason, they have more of a chance of securing an interview and an all-important opportunity to make their case for employment in person. So thinking about how you tackle the issue of age on your CV and how you present and emphasize your skills seems beneficial. Companies would also benefit from scrutinizing their recruitment practices to ensure biases aren't causing good candidates to be overlooked. So good luck, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Liz, thank you very, very much. All right, coming up in just a few moments, we'll hear from Elizabeth Lyons about how to vet a company. Upcoming sessions, next Friday being the first Friday of the month, we'll have open forum. We'll talk about whatever it is you'd like to talk about. So gather your questions all for the next 7 days, and we will answer them. And anybody on the call is welcome to offer their opinions and suggestions and feedback. So that'll be next Friday, March 4th. On March 11th, why your emotional intelligence matters in today's new world. So Jane Ryan will be with us. She's a PhD candidate and we're talking about emotional intelligence. Well, I don't see Elizabeth on the call yet. She will be joining us any moment. And when she does, we will talk about how to vet a company. So we've got a few minutes here. So I got a question for anybody out there. Let me stop sharing right now for a second. So anybody out there lose their cell phone coverage this week? Anybody an AT&T customer and had their cell phone turned off on Thursday, Wednesday, whatever day it was? Maybe it was Tuesday. I don't remember. Anybody? Yeah, well, AT&T shut down the 3G network and my phone got shut off. So I had to go buy a new phone this week. So not a happy camper, but you know, the way it is. What kind of career question can we answer for somebody while we're waiting for Elizabeth to join us? Anybody have a question on their mind right now?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Lisa.
So how do you answer a potential employer when they are questioning maybe a previous work experience that wasn't good and you left the company as a result? So
Mark, would you like to take that one? Mark or Walt?
Well, yeah, we should have a discussion about your situation. But you know, the general formula for explaining a departure is to try to have empathy for the company. And so you want to take the company's perspective. And most of the time, I'd say 99 out of 100 times, it was really some economic stress, financial stress that they were under. But that doesn't always mean it's very easy to identify, because companies don't want their customers, and certainly not their competitors, to know that they're struggling financially. So they'll go to great lengths to hide that and may only lay off a few people at a time. And then, you begin to wonder if when they had a layoff of one, if it was you or if it was them. But having said that, you want to couch it in the financial situation if you can, and be very brief, positive. And then the most important thing, I think, is then to transition to something that you achieved there that's very relevant to the person you're interviewing with, right? So you can say, yeah, I learned a lot and I contributed a lot. They had a little financial trouble and needed to reduce staff in my department. And so I and 3 other people, were considered redundant. But I wanted to share with you one of my great achievements there, and then say what it was, okay? So you're taking that moment to talk about how you can help them, as Walt likes to say it, by giving them an example of how you helped your previous employer. And 9 out of 10 times, 90% of the time, they'll just go on. And now you're talking about what you really want to talk about, is how you can be helpful to them.
So Lisa,
Thank
make
you.
an appointment with Mark, and yeah, you can go into a lot more detail and figure that out. Well, Elizabeth is with us now. So Elizabeth, thank you for joining us today. She's going to talk about how to vet a company. So I will turn it over to you and let you do your thing. Thanks for being with us again.
Yeah. Sure. Hang on one sec. I'm going to stop my video. I'm going to share my screen here. All right. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
All right. Ta-da! There we go. All right. So the last time I was here, there was a lot of questions and energy around, okay, great, I'm going to get an offer. I believe that. But then what? What if I have 2 offers or 3 offers or 4 offers? How am I going to really know if the employer is the right fit for me? And I thought that was a great question. And I actually cover that quite a bit in my book, I Quit. And then Jeff wrote down some of the most phenomenal notes I have ever seen based off that presentation, which was such humbling and a compliment for me. And he was like, he really took a lot out of that presentation. And so literally what I did was, between that and what I coach clients, I developed this for you, all of you. So what we're going to talk about today is setting some job seeking goals, right? Reflecting on what you really want. So then when you're interviewing, you can really determine if it's the right company for you, and how sometimes we'll touch on sometimes money or another 20 grand is really not what's going to make you happier. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about how to leverage your network and not just uncover hidden jobs, but really uncover information. Like, is this a good place to work? And, you know, I read this stuff online, but what's your experience there? Or did you know anybody that worked there? Or how do you like it there? So we'll talk about that a little bit. And then also I want to touch on just that, right? What's out in social media? What's out on Glassdoor? How valuable is that information? How much should you factor that out, et cetera? So this is the little slide about me. So my name's Elizabeth Lyons. I am here in the Dallas area, but I have clients all over the world, actually. I'm the author of I Quit, Working for You Isn't Working for Me. And one of the reasons that makes me a little bit of a unique coach and a unique voice out there is I have been in the talent acquisition space for over 20 years, and I have seen well over 100,000 resumes from executive level to IT, engineering, all the way up to vice president. I've read a lot of resumes. I've interviewed lots of candidates. So as I coach and as I write, I'm pulling from that experience, and I'm still in the game. It's just now I actually lead talent acquisition, and I actually have a global team. I have individuals in India and also in the US that fill roles. So my job now more full-time is working with the business, working with the vice presidents and directors and senior managers to fill their roles, and then going back with my team and having them be the experts that they are and collaborating to bring the best talent in. So I'm still in the game. A lot of coaches are not in the game anymore, or they don't have like a front view to all of this. So I think that's what makes me a little bit unique. So I just want to touch on this. This is still what people are experiencing, and we have revamped the Great Resignation to the Great Onboarding. That started in January. And on this slide, you'll see how many people are really looking. And it's a huge amount. People that I know that did job changes last year, the year before, they might have moved and they might have made a lot more money, $30,000, $40,000 more, all of a sudden are up in a job search. You know, number one thing I hear them say is, I'm not challenged. So that's kind of interesting. You know, what does that mean exactly? You're not challenged, you're not working from home. And so one of the things I said to all of them was, be careful what you ask for, because right now you might not be challenged, but you can take your kids to school, you can take a long lunch, you can exercise and do a lot of things that enrich your life. If you're looking for more challenge, it could also mean more hours and more demand. So I found that very interesting that people that did make moves and made a whole pile more are actually back out there on the market. And I can think of 4 people right now that they did another job change actually. So they were in their last job a short period of time during the pandemic, and then boom, moved again of their own accord. And that's kind of what we're seeing here. You know, the bulk of the job seekers are between 25 and 34. 55% are in there. And the Dallas market is crazy. It was like over 50% are looking and employed. So it's really crazy in Dallas as well. So one of the reasons this presentation came to be was I talked on the last one a little bit about my own job search, and I had actually, all of a sudden I was the coach that had written all these books that was with an employer myself for 10 years and was leaving. And it was very difficult for me to get to that place where I committed to the search. And so that I think is number one here, committing to the search, not going in on Monday, you know, gritting and bearing it. Okay, I think I can put up with it. And by, you know, Tuesday at 11:15, you know, you're burnt and people are yelling and on fire and you don't like it and you don't want to be there. By Wednesday afternoon, you decide to apply to 3 jobs. You know, Thursday, you're just trying to hold on. Well, now it's Friday and I'll go get a reprieve for the weekend. And so you never really commit to leaving. you play this real passive aggressive game with the market. You put it out there, you pull it back, you put it out there, you get 3 calls, you decide you're not going to go there, or they don't call you back, you don't get the second call back, whatever it is. But there's no real commitment to, okay, I'm really going to leave this employer. I really have to pull it together. When I went through it, and the funniest part about this is I have the experiential knowledge now, not just the coaching knowledge. But when I went through it myself, you know, leaving after 10 years was right up there with a divorce. It was very hard for me and very painful for me. And the story that I tell is absolutely the true story. I went out, it was a beautiful weekend. It was Thanksgiving weekend. It was like 60, 70 degrees or something. I went out for a run, and all of a sudden I just lost it. I sat on a curb and I started crying. And I knew that I had to leave the job, and I knew that I didn't want to leave the job, but I had to. And all of the things the clients had ever said to me in 20 years came up in my face. Like, well, what if I don't have enough? And what if somebody doesn't pick me? And what if I'm too old? What if I should have gotten the certification? What, you know, there's all this doubt and fear that came up around me leaving the company, but knowing I couldn't be there any longer. And so when I got home, my husband took one look at my face and he went, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not okay." I'm not a person that cries, like, ever. And so when he saw my face like that, he knew something really bad had happened. And what had really bad happened was something within inside of me. And he, you know, he's a really, really great guy. And he said to me, "What if you just wrote your resume this weekend and table it?" He's like, "But promise me you'll do that." And I said, "Oh, I can do that." And so I did. I wrote my resume that weekend. And it was a crappy resume, frankly. And I didn't care. I didn't even know it was crappy till I went to rewrite it. But I did that. And then I just let it be. And I thought work would slow down November, December. It did not. January, it was still on fire. February, it was on fire. Then a piece of information came to me about work that all of a sudden now we're hitting my integrity compass. And I'm like, I don't think I can be here anymore, because now I have this information. And in the end of the day, I'm putting my energy in a place that I can't do this anymore from an integrity standpoint. So April 3rd, I actually put my first resume out there. So think about that. From Thanksgiving weekend, still couldn't do it. But when I did it on April 3rd, I did it and I put it out there, and I tracked all of my jobs. And I had a lot of interviews with really top name companies, which frankly, I'm proud of. I didn't shoot low. I didn't shoot medium. I decided to really shoot for the biggest names out there and see what I could do. And I remember one day coaching a client during my own job search, and she had been with her company like 9 years, and she really wasn't getting any further in the job search. And I said to her these words: "What would it take for you to walk away?" And there was silence. What would it really take for you to decide you can't be there anymore? And I bet you it's more than just money. And as soon as those words came out of my face, when I hung up the phone with her on a Saturday, I immediately went into my office and I wrote down for myself what it would take for me to walk away 10 years. And it was very detailed. And what I found for myself, it was 100% about the people I worked with. It was about how they treated each other on a bad day. It was about how they solved problems. It was about positivity. It was about the people. It wasn't about the job. It certainly wasn't about making more money. And my husband said it perfectly. He said, "You're not looking for a bigger house, Elizabeth. You're looking for a better neighborhood. Your neighborhood sucks." And it did. And so that was reality. So when I went into these interviews, I was asking questions to really uncover who were they, you know, what are they about? What does a bad day look like? And I was really asking a lot of hard questions around leadership and working together. I was not asking questions around promotion, path, how do you recognize, you know, good performance? I didn't care about that for me. That's how I went about the search. So I walked into every interview knowing what my hard stops was, flipped it around, formed open-ended questions to ask on every single interview. And then I could actually vet and understand, is this going to be a place for me or not? So when you're out there on the search, what you're going to experience is lots of opportunities in general. You know, you're going to get a lot of callbacks. They may or may not be good. But unless you do the upfront work and really figure out if it's a good place, you won't know. How will you ever know? How will you ever know if it's a good place for you unless you actually know what you're looking for? And that's only going to happen before you get into these interviews, kind of thing. You're going to find a lot of people that are interviewing in those same jobs are going to be pretty tenured people generally. People that are in their jobs 10 and 20 years with excellent performance, that's going to be your competition. You know, there's probably going to be a few of those sprinkled in. You're going to find a lot of recruiters calling you and they don't understand your skill set or what you do whatsoever. You might find that. You might find that you have multiple video interviews with different kinds of people. And then when you actually take the job, very sloppy onboarding, because companies right now are overwhelmed with attrition and then trying to onboard people. And if it's a work from home situation or even 2 days work from home, sometimes that onboarding is sloppy. So and don't freak out. Like if you're supposed to start a job and nobody knows where you should be, or you can't log in, or the computer is not configured, don't freak out. It's not you. It's probably not the first time it happened. And you'll just work through that. But that's probably going to be your experience. One of the things that I did that I would recommend to any client anyway, but then I had to go do it, was to really leverage your network. And so, you know, I remember when I applied to a job at JP Morgan Chase, and I applied and I was expecting a call back, but I knew 3 people that had worked there. And so I literally reached out to him and was like, hey, can I call you on Friday? I want to bounce something off of you. And I asked them, like, what is it like to work there? You know, there's all this mixed feedback about what that place is like. And it was interesting. Every single thing that those 3 people told me turned out to be true. That's what was so interesting. So I didn't go to one person I knew that worked there. I tried to get 2 or 3. And when I listened, I tried to filter out what was their opinion or what was maybe a bad experience they had. I tried to really get to something that looked like truth, or as close as I could to it. So ask them, what's it really like to work there? If a recruiter calls you about a job, flat out ask them, have you placed people in this company before? Have you met the hiring manager? What are they like? That's really powerful, because if they don't know, how good are they going to help you get this job or coach you about the blind spots? They're not. So it's your job to try to kind of uncover that. Ask people about their organizations. Like I asked one person at Citibank what their, you know, diversity inclusion was like. You know, did they promote women, and how, you know, what was that like? And it was a long pause, and the response came back, well, I read a lot of emails about it. Okay, well, that's, you know, if that's a hard stop for you, that's good to know. That, and I laughed. I said, you said everything and nothing. I got it. So if that's a hard stop for you, then that's a good question to ask, right? Because what they put on their job board around diversity, inclusion, and you know, lots of different people in the executive ranks and all that, you know, what they put on their job board may not be the experience of the people that are in there. And so it might be good to figure that out if that's a hard stop for you. And then my favorite question that I asked on any interview, and I asked my network, on a bad day, what's it like there? Because I think that's important. You know, I knew what a bad day looked like where I was at. You know, I did not like opening an email with a request for me with 15 people copied on it for no reason. You know, it was never like that for 10 years before. And now it's like that. That was starting to like get at me, because I could feel the intention was this weird call out, or this weird blame, or this weird witch hunt. I could feel the energy in the email. And I was like, I don't want to be a part of it. There's nothing about this that's collaborative or problem solving, or there's nothing great about this. And so I really want to know, on a bad day, what does that look like? You know, is there support, collaboration? That to me is the measurement of an organization. When it's not going well, how do people behave? What's tolerated? Is bad behavior okay culturally with the organization? What you'll find too is if that's really allowed, usually their stock isn't very high. I had a post on LinkedIn over the weekend, and I talked about that. I said, if you've got people that are, have a lot of heavy emotional issues and that are traumatized from way back when, well, guess what? That comes in the office every day, all day long. And if you get 30 or 40,000 people in a company, now that's what's going on. All of that's going on with each other. And usually what you find is those companies aren't successful. When you find magically successful people in a company, when you look at a Salesforce or a Microsoft or whatever it is, what you'll find is high degrees of collaboration, high degrees of commitment. You don't find they don't have problems or they don't have market issues or they didn't get through a recession. It's the people collectively that propels them. That's what I look for, because what they say on their job board is just blah, blah, blah. And whatever the recruiter tells me is about the same. So I'm asking questions to really figure out what goes on in here and how do people behave, and knowing my own shortcomings, knowing when, I'm probably going to drop the F-bomb in a meeting because I've had it with somebody, because I know that's how I can get. I know my own prickly behavior. So I'm not looking for perfection because I also know myself. I'm looking for, what is it like? I can sign up for something that isn't great, but it's got to be better than where I'm at. So these are more questions that you can consider or think about. There's also a whole chapter in my book, I Quit Working for You Isn't Working for Me. There's a whole chapter on questions that you can ask in an interview. And again, just a little reminder, the website is marketing. Open-ended questions are going to probably pull the amount of detail you want. That's going to allow you to listen. And you're looking for clues. You're looking for, did they hesitate? How comfortable they are talking about that. When I interview with Visa, I went all through their job board. And when I was on the call with the recruiter, I was testing them a little bit. I was like, it's really interesting. You have this thing about sustainability on your job board. Tell me about that. And it was absolutely a trap. I wanted to know, like, did he know anything about this in the company, or was this just something they threw up on the site? Are they all living this, or is this just something nice to read? So I wanted to touch on this again in the presentation around the stages of the job search. This is really the cycle of change. You can put it beautifully, overlay it onto a job search, but this is the cycle of change, right? We have the status quo, we're disrupting it, we're exploring it, and now we're all committed moving forward and rebuilding it. Well, the job search is no different. I kept trying to roll through the status quo until I couldn't anymore. And I was sitting on a curb and crying. That would have been my disruption stage. And then April 3rd, when I put my first application out, was my exploring. And then I was in the middle of rebuilding and getting out of there. I was reaching out to my network and asking them questions. How I did it for me, I know the market. Whether I coach this or I do this, I know the market. So I know that if I put applications out every single day, the market will respond one way or the other every single day. So I got up at 5 o'clock and I sat and I did my job search for about an hour and 15 minutes. And I got to tell you, when I logged into work or went into the office at 8 a.m., I felt great, man. I felt like I had a dirty little secret, and it was awesome because I was like, I'm not going to be here long. So I walked in like, they were like, hey, how's it going? I know yesterday was rough. Oh, it's great. How are you? I'm like, I'm on fire, man. I've been looking for jobs. I know that somebody is going to want this somewhere. Like I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to do the exploration. So, and I did it every single day, even if I had interviews. If I had 2 interviews a week, it didn't matter. I'm up at 5, I'm doing the job search, then I'm going to work. It's out of the way. It's cooking in the back burner. I'm not trying to do it on a Saturday. I'm not trying to jam it in at 6 o'clock on Wednesday when I'm tired from work and they wore me out. I'm up in the morning, committed, looking, application out in my Excel spreadsheet, writing everybody down, figuring out if they're going to call me back or not. I got a track of it, then I'm working, then I'm done. Weekends, I didn't do the job search. I did it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Weekends, I just kind of relaxed because I had been through interviews, I'd been through work, I was tired. But it was very fruitful. I think my numbers, if I recall them right, I applied on April 3rd. I started a position on June 23rd. I had put out 23 applications, 25 applications. I had 5 to 6 solid interviews and 2 offers. And I mean solid interviews. Goldman Sachs, Visa, JP Morgan, US Bank. I mean, I did the drill and it worked out. And then in the end, when I had the 2 offers, I had to ask myself, I got to reject one. How am I going to do this? And it was a very careful decision. One job was, $35,000 more and the exact same job I had been doing. And the other job was a leadership role, way more responsibility, leading a team, global company, billions of dollars. I mean, in my space, in a space of payments, they had that, but it was bigger. And yeah, I had to really look at that. Like, do I want to lead and take all that on, or do I just want to, make more money and kick it? And they were both about the same amount of money. And it was a tough choice. I remember thinking it was a tough choice. And I made the choice I did. And I've never been unhappy, and I've never felt like I shouldn't have gone. And in fact, 3 months after I took that position, and it was a tough day, I found out that the entire executive staff from the place I got the offer were no longer there. So the people that I were going to work with, that I believed in, that was going to make me go there, were all gone. So I was even more convinced I had made the right decision. So don't be afraid to reject a job. If it doesn't fit your original parameters of what's it going to take to walk away, don't settle. I would strongly advise that. Don't settle, but know what you want before you walk into those interviews. That is the biggest mistake I see people make. The biggest coachings with clients that I do right now is not necessarily spending a whole lot of time on the search or, where are they looking? I'm not doing that as a coach. I'm spending a whole lot of time in, discovering with them what the next position has to look like and getting real commitment on that, going through the resume, rewriting resumes sometimes, redoing LinkedIn's. But again, not a whole lot of time spent there. It's really spent in what do you really want and how are you going to identify it? If you're on 5 interviews, how are you going to know this what you want is there or not there? And then this page, I gave you guys my sources on this, which goes back to the data on how many people are leaving. And then this is what my book looks like. I Quit Working for You Isn't Working for Me. If any of you want to schedule just 15 minutes with me and do like a resume review, or you have like one question around the search, I'm happy to answer it. Just say that you came from this group, because I've done some other speaking events. But anybody that comes through Jeff's group, I'm happy to work with and give you some pointers. And very often you read the copy of the book, and you're off and running. This is embarrassing to say, and I'll leave you guys with this funny story, but there was a point in my search, before I put the first application out, that my husband, who's extremely patient and supportive, was really irritated with me one day. And he said, "You really need to go read a copy of your own book." And that really shut me up quickly. And I really take in really hard feedback well. And if it's really thrown at me in a rough way, I tend to really take it in well. And I don't know what that is about me, particularly from him. There's a few people that if they say it, even if they say it really rough, I'm like, oh, okay, I really need to look at this no matter how I feel. And so I did, like, I'll tell you guys the truth. It was like very early in the morning, like 5:30, I crawled out of bed and I literally closed the door in my office, like, so I could act like I was busy in here. And I literally started to read my own book and I put it into practice. And I was probably 3 chapters in. I was like, oh, I know how to do this. I totally know how to do this. This is going to be fine. So it works. And I've had a lot of emails over the years, like, boy, this really works. So it's a short read. It's 100 pages. It certainly will get you there. If you need a coach, maybe you feel like you need a coach, but usually this is enough. And again, I'm happy to, schedule calls with people or what have you, if that's what we want to do too. So that's all I have for you guys this morning.
Elizabeth, thank you very much.
Sure.
So let's open it up for questions. We have a little bit of time before Elizabeth has got to go on to her next very important meeting. So if you have a question, please feel free to unmute your mic and ask away. Questions?
So I guess I've got one if I can.
Go ahead, Leon. Or whoever, Matthew, go ahead.
Yes, I'm sorry. So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you. That was really inspirational because in my work situation, that's kind of exactly how I have felt and kind of got to that point myself earlier this month and just had to sit down and have that hard conversation that, it's time to pull the plug, man. Parachutes on, we got to go. I've done this for 12 years and it's just getting worse, not any better for a number of reasons, but same situation. I came home and had the same experience. It's time for you to go. I can't look at you like this all the time. You just need to go back to work and leave. And I said, okay. So I went into it with knowing I needed to do this, but not knowing what the first steps need to be once I do it. So, jumped out of the plane and then trying to make a plan on where I go from there. But for somebody who is looking to make a career transition out of like a retail operations HR background into more of an office-based HR background, what any tips from you on how does one begin that process?
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a client a month ago that she had an infrastructure background and wanted to get into security and had touched security and had done some of it. And the one thing I will tell you is now's the time. Never in your life will you find a more forgiving market. So if you're going to pivot and go into something else that's, close, right? You're definitely on the highway, now's the time to do it because there's such a shortage of candidates now that they are very forgiving. I just saw something come out. I think it was LinkedIn. And one of the data points that they had in all the people in the job search was you could even switch industries right now, where before it's unforgiving, like people in payments and banking and financial. If you don't have that, they're not going to even talk to you. It's rare. It would be really rare. There's certain industries where manufacturing, like if you don't have that, it doesn't matter what job you have in manufacturing. If you don't have that, you're not going there. So now's the time. That would be the one thing I would say to you. And you might need a coach, somebody to rewrite that resume. I mean, Jody needed somebody and I do this stuff all the time, but it was fun for me because I had to really think. Like I was really, and what we produced together was great. And it worked. It was like, if you're going to pivot, this is what you want to say. This is how we need to present it. This is what you need to say on the interview. You might need somebody because the resume isn't going to tell the story. And we want to call out, what you do have that's going to make you viable. But it's a very forgiving market. So if you want to do something like that, do it. You're not going to be able to do like huge things. Like you're not going to, be a person that waits tables and now becomes a veterinarian without schooling. You know what I mean? Like it's not going to happen. But I mean, basic kind of, I have a little bit of experience, not a whole lot. I'd like to do this job. I can't say it enough. Now's the time. I've been doing it over 20 years. It's this kind of thing is never going to occur again in the market. And I don't want to alarm too many of you, but we're like, 5 minutes from recession. If you're doing a change, you're actually a little late in the game. You got to get in there and do it and pull those offers because here's the deal. You go to the next company, you're the last man in. When they go through the layoffs, you could be the first one out. So be careful in your changes because maybe you do need to sit there and suck it up because there's nothing else better to move to. You know, that's where we're at in the market. All of the indicators for a week on my LinkedIn, I've given nothing but economic reports from solid sources that say we're there. Ukraine was just bombed. Like I have a weird spidey sense around recession. Like if every day I wake up, I'm like, it's coming. They say next year. I don't know if we're going to make it. So if you're in a job change now, you got to get jiggy with it, because you're almost done. And your opportunities aren't going to be as great as they were, you know, last year, frankly, because this year companies are pulling back a little bit. Now they're only going to fill their attrition. Now, maybe that'll work in your job search and maybe it won't, right? But I mean, I would, you know, commit to the search and go. And if that's what you want, definitely. I mean, you can do two, you know, like Jody did two things. She went after her core skill set, and then she went after the security roles, and we got her qualified for this. So maybe do both just to get you out of there.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that, because that's definitely something that I was trying to think about the best ways to go about showcasing your talent and your background, and without the actual job title per se for the new transition. You know,
it can be done.
Thank you.
It absolutely can be done, and
Awesome.
done really well. Again, you may need an expertise around there to write it in a way that you get that kind of visibility, but it's a small investment, but if it's going to open it up to opportunity, then you might want to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Great feedback.
Yeah, sure.
And I know from the session we did last, when you were here with us a month ago, the one thing I took away, you know, from it really was, what are the top 3 things you want in your new company? You know, to define what those are. What is the role going to look like? And I know my son's very unhappy in his job, and we had a conversation this past weekend. And, you know, I told him, I said, all right, so you're really unhappy, you don't like where you're at. So what are the top 3 things that you want in your new job? You know, think about it, write that down, and then focus on doing that. And I mean, I just thought that was, I mean, I will be using that little bit of advice for anybody in job seeking mode, that if they haven't really thought about what it is they want to do, it's going to be very difficult for them to, they're just going to randomly take something and it may or may not work out.
It was hard for me to leave my boss. My boss kept me there a year and a half longer than I should have been. And then in the end, I found out it was the same for him. And then the very ironic part about that story was there was a day where I disclosed that I was looking, and then he got me talking. He's like, "Oh, you're along further than I had thought." And then how it worked out was, I helped him with his resume and his search, aggressively helped him get out of there, because he's like, if you're not staying, I'm definitely not staying. And when I gave notice, 2 weeks later, he gave notice. So they all thought we were in huge cahoots. Like maybe I got some job and hired him, or you know, and that's not how it went. We actually went to different companies, but you know, so going into the next job, the boss was important to me. So like, that's something to look at, is who you report to important to you. And what does that look like? Like, I couldn't have a more different boss than my own personality. And that's okay, because we work together so well. And I learned so much from her. So it's not about, you know, it could be polar opposites, but again, can you collaborate? Can you learn? Can you grow? If it's important you be promoted, like, do you trust this person to be that voice for you in rooms where you're not in the company, right? Like, so I think that's part of the 3 questions too. It was definitely the people I worked with, and I knew it was like, I could never replace, you know, Trevor. There's no way. I'll tell you, the last few months, I'm like, I said to my husband, I'm like, man, I'm pretty darn close. And he goes, you are. And he said, it's so rare. If you have working relationships like that, they're like once in a lifetime. And so maybe now you're trying to duplicate that, but you got to get to the marrow of what was the magic that happened when you worked with that person. And it could be that they were really different. You know, I think that's worth looking at, because I think that's where happiness ultimately stems from in work. I think 90% of it is your attitude and how you walk into work every day, and your own wanting to be there. A lot of it is how you see it. And if you read anything Elizabeth Lyons, it's the biggest tagline, and how you see it. There's a lot of that, but then there is a percentage of, you know, the people around you. And I just couldn't keep it going with the people around me anymore. Right. So what are those 3 things? Is it the boss? Is it the location? Is it Is it the people? Is it the work? Is it I'm not challenged? Is it, you know what? I've taken low pay for 10 years. I really want to see what's out there. This can really benefit my whole family. When you make a job change and it's like 30, 40,000, you can't believe it's stupid change your life money. Like really change your life money. This isn't just get a new car. This is like your kids might go to a better school, or you've got funding for your retirement, or maybe, there are people out there that's like, you know what, I'm terrified, but I think I'll go out there. And when they see how much money is floating around, it's shocking. And they're like, well, why am I going to do this? Why, even if I am happy, why wouldn't I want to go do this? Because it's going to change the lifestyle of my family. We had one gentleman leave because, the offer he got was such a difference in his retirement and how he could retire early. He couldn't not take the job, and sometimes we lose people for that, but you're dead on. What are the three things? What is it for you?
Right. I saw an interesting article this week saying that, all right, so we went through the Great Resignation and then you renamed it what?
It's the Great Onboarding. And if you Google that, you'll see it. Yeah, you'll see it in January.
I saw an article this week going that the Great Resignation is going to happen again because as companies start to go back and want people back in the office, there'll be a new round of people who go, nope, I'm not going to do that, and I resign, or I'm going to look for another job. So I think that cycle is going to happen again here as long as the numbers keep decreasing and companies start going back and meeting in person.
Well, it's, I just had a team meeting before I jumped on this. And, one of the things that I said that I noticed was last week I was up in Boulder, Colorado, and all of the Denver area dropped their mask mandate. And the week before that, in the Super Bowl, magically, all of California dropped their mask mandate because they want people flying in and spending money. And so as we're starting to see highly liberal states drop their mask mandates, and in the same moment, JP Morgan or we always look at the big tech companies and the big banking and financial companies, and none of those guys makes a move without either calling their peer or seeing what the other one's doing. So if you see, that's what you'll see is like Amazon will make a statement, we're going back in the office, or what I see more in banking and financial, JP Morgan or Citi or whatever, they'll come out with a stunt around that. It'll be interesting to see where this all lands, because there may be another wave of that where people just aren't going to go in. But I mean, the general, and this is what I told you was just fact, but this is my own opinion on it. What we're seeing is the general population is like, they're fried with the pandemic and the mask and everything else, like over. Like if you're seeing it over in the West Coast and the most liberal states, we're 2 years into this thing. I mean, it's kind of over. Like the people are starting to be done with it too. It's hurting the economy. So it'd be interesting to see. We still keep talking about what does the new office look like post-pandemic. I don't think we know. I think we're still designing it. But you can, so what? So let's say you get a remote job and then they pull you in the office 2 days a week, or they make you travel once a quarter to go be with them. That might change, but who cares? That's still a low amount of time. Right. The opportunities are definitely now. I mean, if you want something, now's the time to ask, but please do it quickly, because it's starting to, the market is going to push, because once we go into recession, they're all going to do their layoffs, regardless of the attrition or what they have filled. Right now, we've got a whole bunch of candidates spilling out into the market again, and then we're resetting. And Texas is forgiving, we reset here about a year, 18 months. If you're in some of the other areas, it's 2 years or more before they're able to recover and rebuild.
Right.
So
Walt, I see you unmuted your mic. You have a question?
Yeah, I did have a question. Thanks, Elizabeth. Great information, great stuff. Sure. We are two birds in the same cage here. I would ask you this. I see us moving more and more to a remote society. It's like our children don't talk. I mean, the society is not very much of a social atmosphere anymore, and we're moving to less social. So do you think that we're willing to put up more with things we don't like because we're not going into the office? We're not seeing it all the time. We just see it on Zoom or something like that. And so it's okay if we just, I think I can hack it. It's not that bad.
I couldn't, even because, I mean, I was remote the last few months and I couldn't, because the emails were so aggressive and the phone calls were so out of line. And you know, when you've got 40 or 50,000 people and you serve, say, 300 of those tens of thousands, you know, I always say there's always one in the family. There's always one that's a pain in the neck and bumpy, and and everybody in the family knows who that is. No, this was like, everybody is aggressive, on fire, nasty, and it's 10:15. And like, I would take the next call and be like, I'm sorry, 6 people wore me out before you got here. What do you want? And now I'm ready to fight. So no, that was remote. And I couldn't rejuvenate enough by logging out and doing it over the weekend. I couldn't. And I'm pretty resilient. And I only worked my 8 hours. My boss was very clear. Don't look at it on weekends. You'll never get it all done. It's ridiculous ask, you know, don't. So I couldn't sustain it. So no, I don't think we put up with more because it's remote. And the 4 people I told you about that did the job change, all 4 of them had remote jobs. And their full complaint was, I'm not being challenged. And I was like, huh. So it's not enough, because there's still here's what I make up. There's still an energetic exchange, whether it's coming through your email or it's coming through your voice in Teams or it's coming through the video, there's still an energetic exchange. I have less of it because I'm not physically in front of you as the lightning bolt in the office, but there's still an exchange. And if it continues to be hostile and negative for long periods of time, you know, you're still being exposed to that. And when you have a culture that sustains that and complements that and supports that kind of behavior, you can never get away from it. So no, I don't think we'll just put up with it because it's just, you know, open up the computer and log it off. And we're not. I didn't. The other people I know that did the changes didn't either.
Yeah, I'm sure when they're really strong signals and everything you do, that's certainly not the place.
But I agree, we're all becoming so virtual. I mean, if you want a relationship with your grandkid, you better figure out FaceTime. It's just where we're at.
Yeah.
All right. All right, thank you, Walt. Anybody else have a question?
Could you please tell me what the name of your book was again? Planning Your Great.
It's I Quit. Working for you isn't working for me.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. And it's Lyons, Lyons. It's on my site too, on Lyonsology.
I'll be sure to I'll put a link to the Amazon link in the email.
Oh, cool. Oh, great.
I'll put that out to everybody. What else? Rusty, you have a question?
Yes, Elizabeth, thank you so much for sharing all this great information. During your history of reviewing all of these resumes and coaching people, are there any questions that you would recommend you don't ask during the vetting process? Things that might have jeopardized the candidate or may have labeled them as a troublemaker?
I mean, off the top of my head, even in this market, you know, asking about comp package, vacation package, any of that in first round of interview with the recruiter, you know, maybe with the recruiter, it's okay, but maybe not with the hiring manager. I wouldn't jump right into comp right away, but by second interview, you definitely want to be asking those questions. I think open-ended questions are the most important. Try to get them talking. And I think the other thing is remembering that it's your interview too. It is not for you to get picked, rejected, or liked. This is business and it's money, right? And so that's really important when you go into these interviews. You have on a pad of paper next to you, these are the 3 things I need to leave. And these are the 5 questions that I'm going to ask. And if we run out of time, I'm going to ask for another meeting. And you don't move from the process. It's a process. It has nothing to do with you. It has no flavor or emotion at all. It's a process. And you're just going to run everybody that you interview with through this process. And then in the end, you can make a viable kind of decision around what you've heard and does it fit what you need. But there's no faux pas questions really, especially now. When I did mine, you know, I felt comfortable controlling the conversation because I was nervous and because that's my personality. So I literally walked into every interview and it's like, thank you so much for seeing me. As you can tell from my interview, I don't interview, or you can tell from my resume, I don't interview a lot. I'm leaving my job after 10 years. Here's the reasons why I'm leaving my job. So I didn't give them a chance to be like, hey, Elizabeth, tell me about your background. I walked right in there with reminding you, did you read my resume? Did you get, I'm coming out of like the biggest fintech on the planet, on par with Apple. Like, do you understand as the recruiter who you're talking to? Like, you're not going to get a lot of me. Like, I know that. I'm confident in that. Did you read that I'm here 10 years? Do you understand what this means? It's my way of reminding like the junior level recruiters, like, step it up. If you didn't do your homework and you didn't read it, I'm here to remind you. So I'm thanking them. Hey, thanks so much. Please be gracious with me. I don't interview a lot. You know, I do have some questions at the end. Here's why I'm leaving. So I got that all literally in 2.5 minutes. I used to time myself. How quick could I get that out? How succinctly could I get that out? And now I'm kicked back. You can ask me anything you want. So I drove that conversation. That's my personality. People I coach can't do that. 90% of them can't. I don't need them to do that. I just need them to know what the heck they want. So then when all the offers come in, they're not like wooed and excited, and then they make a really bad decision and now a recession happened. So that's all I'm trying to do with clients at this point. So that's a very long answer, but that's really the best I can give you.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Anybody else?
I don't know how we're doing with time, but if time's permitting, I do have a question.
Yeah.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Good information as always. How do you vet companies that are in transition? So I've run across 2 scenarios and I'm not sure how to, it's kind of somewhat of a leap of faith. The first scenario is there's, private companies that have had a good reputation. They're now merging with another company or they're about to go public. So there's some unknown there. And then the other situation is companies that have had traditionally bad reputation, but the new CEO is coming in and there seems to be a change of energy and momentum. So
that's a great
any advice or
question.
counsel how to reduce the
Yeah,
unknowns?
that's a great question. So I want to do the second piece first. So the new CEO. So do your homework. The new CEO, really do a deep dive online. Where did they come from? Was that company successful? Did the stock split? What was great about that company that they came from? Something happened or didn't happen, and maybe you don't want it. Now, if you take that job, no, you're going to have old culture people that went through the old CEO that were beat up, went through a lot of negativity, hate their jobs, and they're like, yeah, I'm just here to bat around a bunch of emails, whatever, it all pays the same. Not committed to the new CEO, not excited, not on fire, also not committed. Know that you're walking into a job where probably 50% or more is going to be that. And now you come and you're like on fire and excited about the direction of the CEO. And you may also not be liked because of that. That's fine. If you believe in that CEO and the vision, and that CEO has a very solid track record, go there. But if you get some weirdness that the CEO doesn't have that, you might pass. Things that are startup in nature, or we just did a merger in nature, me personally, I'm done talking to you. I am 5 minutes from recession, man. I am not going to go risk it with you. And I'm not going to go build your mousetrap over again. Not for any amount of money. There's no security there. You're still getting your poop in a group. Not interested. For me, I don't want to do that, and I was real clear, like, I'm not going to go build the mousetrap for somebody. I just built it and watched the stock split twice and then went through a transition and put up with a lot of garbage. So unless I don't care how much money you're throwing at me, I don't want to go do that, and so I was really clear in what I wanted to do and what I wasn't going to do. But things that are like little on the edge, have possibility, not now. Not go on my LinkedIn, join me on LinkedIn. You'll see all the articles. We are 5 minutes away from recession. We just bombed Ukraine. Are you kidding me? Why would you go there? You're going to go get laid off in 6 months for what? It's huge risk. I'd be like, nah, I can't talk to you. You're not stable enough. You just like divorced and now you're dating me. You're not stable. I don't want to do this. You know what I mean? So but that's me. If you're a big risk taker and you have the stomach for it, and here's the fact, truth. I don't like saying this. I have the stomach for that. I'm conservative, when I looked around as a young girl, the people that were grossly wealthy were conservative. They saved their money. They worked hard. Their investments were conservative. They paid down debt and they had high overhead. That's who I am. So I don't want to go with companies that are a bunch of flashbang because that scares me. That's not where I'm at. And that plan has worked out for me in my life. But if you like risk, if you want to be around that kind of energy, if if that doesn't bother you and you can sleep at night, then maybe that's for you. The other one with the CEO, there might be something there. There might be something really good there. But understand what you're walking into. That CEO is going to have to do massive amounts of cultural change to make that stock go up and then split and then sell again. Does that CEO do turnarounds? Is he or she a turnaround guy? Where did they come out of? How long were they there? What did the stock do? What did the stock do in recession? That's what we're looking at.
Thank you. Very, very good points. Yeah.
That was the change I did. I went to a company that they had a new CEO, but I actually knew personally that CEO, and I knew what they had done. And I saw all the people from a company follow. And I thought, oh, I'll take that offer. The other offer was $250 billion pharmaceutical place. And I took the other, which would look more risky, but I knew what that CEO could do. And I saw, and I also tracked it for a year, 6 months, a year, and watched the stock go. But when I came in, and still to this day, has he won everybody over? Nope. Whole bunch of people that are like, yeah, it's lipstick on a pig. I'm like, well, at some point we push you out because you're going to get on this train and be positive, or you're going to have to get off. Because at some point, the energy is going to build to a place where we're all rocking and rolling, trying to play the same music. And if you're not a part of it, you're not a part of it, and that's okay. So that's a cultural thing you'll have to be okay with, signing up for.
Right. All right, we have time for one more question. If somebody has a question. Anybody else?
I have one if nobody else has one.
Yeah, go ahead, Walt.
One of the things, you and I talk about is, preparing that questions list to find out what you need to know, whether you want to work there or not, and finding out about that, and a really strong emphasis on the culture because it's the people that really make the difference. Do you recommend that when you're preparing your questions list, that you also prepare a list of who are the people you want to talk to, and if they're not in the interview process, to ask for time to speak with those people so you can find out more about that?
I don't do that. I let them run their own interview process. So I don't care who's asking me what. What I am looking for is consistency. So it's a process. I don't care if I'm with the recruiter, the hiring manager, the tech team, the CEO, marketing. I don't care. I don't care if they're all on a Zoom. It's the same set of questions. And I'm looking for consistency in how they answer those questions. Even if they're not consistent, that's a flag for me. It could mean that they're not committed to the company themselves. It could mean a plethora of things. It still might mean I might take the job, but it's a process. So once, it's like any science experiment, I'm setting it up in a way. I don't know what the outcome is, but it's the same set of questions for all 5 people. And I don't even really care what their response is. I'm just really kind of recording it and understanding it. And then when I go back, I'll debrief myself. And then I'm looking at them saying, well, this is a place that I would want to be, or this is a place I wouldn't want to be. I mean, I was on the phone with Goldman Sachs, second interview, literally 15 minutes in, I was like, I will never work for you. Never. I don't care what you pay me. This is not how I want to be treated or the culture. And there was flags 15 minutes in the conversation because I knew I had asked him the same sets of questions I had asked the first person. So it's just consistency.
I agree with all of that, but suppose that you go through the process and there's not a team interview, there's not your co-workers interview. Would you ask to have an interview with the team?
It depends what you want. I did not. I didn't care about my peers or the team because it wasn't, my criteria was my boss and the culture. And so once I'd been through the interviews, I didn't feel the big need to push it. Can you do it? Absolutely. Is it going to be looked at bad? No, not at all. But in my criteria for what I was looking for, it wasn't necessary to pull everybody else in.
Well, if you find out all the answers without going through additional interviews, you're done. So makes sense.
Yeah, I trusted too. I gotta say, I trusted the responses I was getting from the people I was talking to. So I didn't feel like I had to vet further. I didn't feel like I had to keep digging. My scenario is very weird though. Like when I interviewed with a pharmaceutical company, there was one man on the panel that I had worked with 7 years prior. So I already knew him. So if I asked him a question, I knew he would tell me that, you know, what was real and what wasn't if I asked the hard stuff. But I was still asking him the same set of questions as everybody else. So I didn't feel like I had to keep going there. And I poked with who's the tough one in the bunch, right? Who's the difficult internal client? And it all came back the same name. I'm like, okay, well, great. And then I thought, well, should I meet that person? And I was like, nah, I'll figure it out when I get there. So you can. It's just, you know, your comfort level in trust. Like, do you trust what the person is telling you? Do you feel like you need to vet further? If you do, then vet further. You know, I would support that.
Oh, great. Thank you. All right, Elizabeth, thank you very much for your time. For everybody, I know some people have had to drop off already, so thank you for your information. I will put out to everybody the memo or the email I put out, or the document I put out a month ago after Elizabeth was with us with those comments. And I think I've seen a couple of articles about job, you know, questions you should ask. So I've added that to the bottom of the list. So I'll be sure to add that on there. So Elizabeth,
Great.
thank you very much for your time. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. For everybody else, I want to share just upcoming, just as a reminder, next Friday, we will have an open forum. We will talk about whatever it is you would like to talk about. If you have not put your 30-second introductions into the Zoom chat window, please do so. Name, phone, email address, position you're looking for, a couple target companies. That way I'll be sure to get you added to the roster. And I'll put all that out in about an hour, hour and a half. I'll get that out to everybody. Career DFW and Career USA, we're putting on training 4 days a week. Hopefully you'll join us next Tuesday. Locke Alderson will be with us to talk about how to use LinkedIn for job hunting, strategies to get results. Next Wednesday, we'll talk about the practice interview team. We'll be able to watch an actual practice interview. Next Thursday, first Thursday of the month, we'll be talking all about resumes, effective resumes. So please join us for that. And then, as we said, next Friday is open forum. We'll talk about whatever it is you want to talk about. This session has been recorded. It is going to be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel. On the Career USA YouTube channel, click on playlist, and then down below, pick whichever list you like. Every video that I upload always goes into a playlist to make it easy for you to find. Click at the very bottom where you see that red arrow where it says View Full Playlist, and up will come a list of the dates. Most current should be on top, and the title of the talk. That way you can watch whatever video it is you'd like to see. So thanks everybody for joining us today. We're not going to have a lunch. I'm heading down to Houston. I'm giving a career talk down in Houston tomorrow. So it'd be nice to actually see people in person. So everybody have a great weekend, and we'll see you all next week. If anybody's on the call who's from Houston, please let me know, because I don't know where to eat tonight for dinner. So I'd appreciate that.